You hear stories about people unknowingly squatting in other people's homes, but never think it would actually happen to you. This happened to me. About 10 years ago, I was living alone in a two-family house on the second floor with my then toddler. For the story to make sense, I need to try and explain the layout and the backstory. My brother's close friend at the time lived on the first floor, and is the one who referred me to the landlord. We had private front entrances, but a shared back entrance with a staircase that ran from the basement all the way to the second floor. I would frequently leave my back door unlocked because I had a habit of locking my keys in the house, and my downstairs neighbor could let me in the back door. The downstairs neighbor had a friend who was kind of down and out. He had a history of substance abuse but was supposedly clean at the time. He was a relatively nice guy, and my neighbor had been letting him stay on his couch for a while. But the neighbor had a 4-year-old daughter, and having someone constantly sleeping on the couch without any plans of finding a permanent living situation was becoming disruptive to their everyday lives. Neighbor tells him he needs to go. It was summertime, so the friend decided he's going to sleep on the couch on our covered porch. We told him that's not acceptable, and when we asked him to leave, we meant the property in general. It had also become abundantly clear that he was using again, and his behavior had become somewhat erratic. He was also making a lot of unsolicited advances on me, which had become increasingly uncomfortable. He wasn't happy, but it isn't our problem. He stopped coming around when we no longer saw him around town. Fast forward a month or two, and I noticed things going missing. Jewelry, small amounts of money left around the house, lighters, inconsequential items I had written off as lost. This house was old with paper-thin walls. The back door in question was right next to the bathroom, along one side of the shower. It also made a very distinct noise when opened. One day my car was at the mechanic, so it probably appeared that I wasn't home. I'm showering, and I swear I heard the back door open. I freeze, practically stop breathing. But after a few minutes, when nobody murdered me American Psycho style, I wrote it off again. I'm a notorious wimp, and had a history since childhood of thinking every strange noise was a potential murderer. This was a long time ago, so I don't remember the exact length of time, possibly a few weeks. The basement was really big and shared, and the landlord also stored stuff down there. It was very packed with some very dark corners. We rarely went down there. The landlord comes by one day and goes down to the basement. He hears a strange noise, grabs a baseball bat, and finds this man in our basement. The man pushed the landlord down, ran out of the house and down the street. We call the police, who find him hiding in a trash can around the corner. You can't make this shit up. Upon further investigation, we find the basement window had been ever so slightly propped open. In the back corner behind some boxes was a nest of blankets filled with our missing items, plus some drug paraphernalia. It reminded me of a creature's nest under stairs at Grimald's place. It's from Harry Potter if you don't know. He had also left his flip phone behind in the chaos where we found a lot of pictures of me sleeping. This man had been high on crack, living in our basement, and regularly entering my apartment, both when I wasn't home and when I was sleeping for months. While he seemed like a nice guy, he was regularly high on hard drugs, and that changes people. I still get chills knowing he could have done anything to me and my child, and I would have never seen it coming. The worst part is that the charges somehow got dropped, and they never gave us an option as the victims. This was not even close to his first criminal offense. My state is notoriously soft on non-violent criminals, regardless of whether it was a victimless crime or not. My local police department is also notorious for making deals in exchange for information on even small-time dealers. We didn't get any justice. Luckily, this didn't have much lasting effect on my mental health, just more of a what the fuck. Can't believe that really happened. Feels like a fever dream. I'm a 29-year-old man from the Philippines. Even though this incident occurred back in 2013, I still find myself haunted by it every time I return to my hometown. At the time, I was just an 18-year-old college student. It was the night of our department's socialization party, which had wrapped up around midnight. As the only one among my friends with a car, I'd always taken on the role of the designated driver. After dropping my friends off at their homes, I was parking in my usual spot, just a few houses away from my own, due to the limited parking in our area. As I was about to exit the car, I noticed a girl standing near the entrance of the alleyway leading to my home, and several others, wearing a shirt with our department's logo. I assumed she had just walked back from the party. In front of her, a man in his late 20s, clad in a hoodie, stood ominously, seemingly blocking her path. The girl locked eyes with me, and I immediately recognized her expression. It was a silent plea for help. Instinct kicked in. I grabbed my bag and stepped out of the car. The man, noticing my presence, began to walk into the alleyway. When I reached the girl, he had vanished from sight. It felt as though whatever threatening situation had occurred moments before was over, and I was tempted to walk away, but then I caught sight of the strange man again. He was leaning against the wall of a nearby house, his gaze fixed on me. A chill ran down my spine, and just then, the girl called out from behind me. Her voice trembled with fear, and I saw her approach visibly shaken. "Can you walk me to my apartment at the end of the alleyway?" she asked, explaining that the man had been silently blocking her way. I glanced back at the man. He appeared intoxicated, perhaps drunk or on drugs. We began to walk, our breaths shallow as we passed by him. After putting some distance between us, I glanced back. To my horror, he was following us. We had already passed my house at that point, but I couldn't leave this girl to face him alone. As fear coursed through me, she suddenly broke into a full sprint, and I had no choice but to keep pace with her. We reached the gate to our apartment, and she hastily swung it open, slamming it shut behind us. We then dashed into the building, where a second gate stood, this one smaller, likely designed to keep pets from escaping. She opened it, and we slipped through just as the sound of the man approaching the first gate reached our ears. We bolted up the stairs, making our way to the third floor. Breathless, the girl knocked urgently but softly at her apartment door. After what felt like an eternity, it swung open, revealing her friends, a guy and a girl around her age. She looked bewildered, but quickly locked the door behind us and led us into the bedroom. They turned off the lights, and we just sat there silently with our hearts pounding. The girl broke down in tears, recounting the terrifying events to her friends. She revealed that the man had been following her for 10 to 15 minutes, and she expressed relief at having seen me. Unsure of what to do next, I called my aunt, who was staying at our house that night. Thankfully, she answered swiftly. I urged her to call the police. At this time, we could now hear the man pacing around the apartment, seemingly looking for us. He was mumbling something we couldn't hear well from the other side of the door. A few minutes later, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was my uncle, a policeman, reassuring me that the help was on the way. What felt like hours dragged on, and eventually the police arrived. My uncle instructed me via phone to come downstairs and recount the ordeal to the officers. They informed us that they had seen the man wandering around the gate and eventually into the far end of the alleyway. Once the police had finished their inquiries, they allowed me to go home. I recounted the entire story to my aunt, who urged me to get some rest. Despite my exhaustion, sleep eluded me as my mind raced with thoughts of the strange man. What if he had caught up with us, armed with a knife or some weapon? I fought to dispel the terrifying images racing through my mind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he might be watching me in the dark, a knife glinting menacingly in his hand. I'm a process server. If you don't know what that is, I basically deliver legal papers to people at their home or place of work. These papers could be anything from foreclosures to child support papers and etc. I have to serve papers to plenty of criminals and sketchy people in general, so I always try to be very careful. Sometimes I serve papers at night because people tend to be at home more often after 5 p.m. Sometimes I have to serve papers to people who live way out in the woods, in the middle of nowhere. These people are my least favorite to serve now, and I will explain why. A few months ago, I had to serve a paper to someone who lived way out in the woods. I probably drove 25 minutes out into the middle of nowhere. It was also when there was still snow on the ground and it was really dark out. I live in one of the most northern states, so winters are brutal. The situation already made me nervous because I was in the middle of nowhere and I had bad cell reception. If my car broke down or if I got a flat tire, I would be in major trouble. Once I started to pull up to the house, I decided not to pull all the way into the driveway because it didn't look well plowed, and I didn't want my car getting stuck. They had a short driveway that went up to a tall fence, so the back of my car was sticking out a few inches towards the road because I didn't pull all the way in. When I went to walk up towards the house, I realized the fence was padlocked, and it was too tall to go over. There was really no way for me to get to the house unless I broke the padlock or somehow climbed up the fence. I was pretty sure the house wasn't getting used though, so I decided to just leave. I got back in my car and tried to back out. My front tires that were on the driveway got stuck in the snow. I tried to turn my tires in different directions and it seemed to be working a little bit. I kept doing that, then went forward a bit and then back again, to try to wiggle my way out. I was doing that for what seemed like forever, probably like 5 minutes, and then I started to get really nervous. I pulled the shovel out of my trunk and started to scoop the snow out from under my car. Once I thought it was good enough, I tried to back out again. It seemed to work a little bit, but it wasn't enough to fully get my car unstuck. Then I saw a truck start to drive up the road. At first I was almost happy because I thought no one would be out here. They slowed down when they saw my car and then started to drive over to my side of the road. I assumed they were going to get out or roll down their window and ask if I needed help. I turned around to wait for the truck to stop, but instead of pulling over to the side of the road, they parked directly behind my car. I remember how my stomach sank, and I got this really terrible feeling in my gut. They pulled their truck directly and closely behind my car so I couldn't back up, even if I tried. If I had tried to back out of that spot, I would have T-boned them in reverse. I had to turn my body around to try to see the driver, but they didn't get out or roll down their windows. They just sat in the truck, blocking me in. I couldn't see the driver very well because it was dark, but I knew it was a man. I think he was waiting for me to get out of my vehicle, but I just sat there and kept my doors locked. We sat there for what felt like a really long time, but was probably only a couple of minutes, when another car started driving up the road. The truck then starts to drive out from behind my vehicle and starts going up the road before the other car reaches mine. The car doesn't stop, but keeps on driving behind the truck. This is when I see the truck pull over on the side of the road and wait for the other car to drive by. This is when I decided I had to get out of this driveway because I was not waiting for that truck to come back for me. I put the car in reverse and instead of trying to inch it out, I literally slammed on the gas and my car shot out of the driveway backwards. I almost went into the ditch on the other side of the road, but I slammed on my brakes just in time. I then slammed on the gas again and drove my car in the opposite direction of the truck. I looked in my rearview mirror once while driving away. I saw that the truck had started to drive away in the other direction. I was so relieved, but instantly my eyes started to tear up because I really didn't know what just happened. I can't say what the other person was going to do, but deep in my gut, I felt like I had just escaped something terrible. The road is a dangerous place for many reasons.